Well, hello, friends, and welcome to the From Busy to Rich podcast, where we help financial advisors grow their businesses beyond the products they sell and the assets they manage to increase profitability and reclaim their time by providing strategies and insights that will not only change your life, but practice. Wes, it's good to see you again today. But before we dive into our focus today, and I'm excited about the continuation of our conversation, for the benefit of our listeners, would you please give a quick recap of really the first part of the conversation and the context that'll drive where we're going today?
Yeah, this is all about how to, in the planning process, talk about leaving not just an inheritance, but a heritage. So we deal with a lot of the common what if scenarios that could complicate, disrupt, and ultimately reduce the profitability and quality of life that inevitably of this inevitable event in our clients' lives. And so the kind of setup stories, you can go back and listen to it, that we used were the two families that are very famous, the Vanderbilts and the Rockefellers. Both were extraordinarily wealthy when the founder had created all the wealth. And years later, as is often, you hear the statement shirt sleeve to shirt sleeves in 3 generations, or clogs to clogs in 3 generations, depending on where you're from. That's exactly what happened with the Vanderbilt family. Cornelius Vanderbilt, when 120 of his descendants were gathered at Vanderbilt University in 1973 for the first family reunion, and there was not one millionaire in the bunch. Now, doesn't mean that they didn't have people that became millionaires from the family, but it wasn't because of the family. It was because all that wealth had been lost over time. Versus the Rockefellers that dramatically have accelerated the wealth that he left for the benefit of his family because of how they left it, and the way that they left it, not just an inheritance, because both left that, but he left a heritage. And when you think about what that is, so there's the definitions of those two that I would give. An inheritance are the tangible assets and financial wealth that are legally transferred from one person to the next or one generation to the next upon death. Versus a heritage is the broader legacy of values, traditions, knowledge, culture, principles that are passed down from one person to the next or one generation to the next. And there are so many things in this that we went over last time about, like, most traditional estate planning focuses on the what if scenario planning. Things like, hey, what if your spouse, what if your business partner passes away? And you absolutely need to do that. We should discuss what would be the situation look like today if things occurred, if one of those things occurred, and there's, maybe what are some alternatives that may better align with what you really care about. And so usually that it involves some pretty standard tools that are really, really powerful, like good documents, wills, trusts, buy-sell agreements, and it involves life insurance, because life insurance is an amazing tool to fill in some gaps if something happens before time has the opportunity to play things out. And so that's all great, but that's focusing on just the inheritance side. And so what we want to do, and we spend a ton of time talking about what are the nuts and bolts you need just as a basic to leave the inheritance in a way that's meaningful. And we talked about where we put that, because this is, again, we're in the direction phase of the process. So the client's already hired us. And then and then moving into that step further. Now, what can we do to actually leave a heritage with that inheritance? And we talked about the family, doing a family constitution that you record yourself talking about every year, having moments, traditions in the family, like family retreats, different holiday events that you can intertwine some things in. And so we help our clients do all these things because most people want to leave both. In fact, if I could choose to receive an inheritance or a heritage that created that inheritance, I would rather have the heritage, because then you can always go create it. Now, don't get me wrong, I'd like to have both. But with that, we talk specifically about, like, hey, what if your family unit, like, you die, your wife dies, you both die? What happens at first death? What happens at second death? How do we do all this stuff? But today I want to take a little bit of a different area that won't apply to everybody, but for a lot of our clients it does. And that's in this area of, what if you're a business partner? Like you are a partner in a business with someone else that's your partner. And let's just say you got 50-50 owners of a company. We've got some great clients. They are longtime friends. They kind of grew up in this business that they're in, this operating company that they're in together. and they bought the company from the original founder. And so it's kind of a cool story, and they're very different, but they kind of do different things within the practice. Their human capital is still extraordinarily valuable to the profitability and quality of that practice. And as long as they're living, man, things are going well, and they're really doing a good job. So while we are doing all their family office work and their big picture planning, one of the conversations we get into is on this area. Hey, let's talk about what if scenarios, because they have two things happening. They have the operating business, and then they also bought the real estate that the operating business sits on. And this is kind of common in a lot of business owner cases. But here's kind of the way the conversation goes. Because again, in this meeting, remember, and we still go through our same big parts. We've had the meeting before we had the meeting, where you've gotten your loom, you've prepared well. Then you go into that meeting, and you're going to have the welcome, the common ground, healthy tension, and next steps. What we're going to zoom into right now is kind of that healthy tension part as it relates to somebody that owns a business that has other people in it that are business partners. So conversation with them was like, hey, guys, Jeff, Tim, I'll say that's their names. Jeff, so let's talk about if one of you dies unexpectedly today, like what is it? What happens right now? Often the common response is, we're not really sure, because they're busy running the business, right? And I'm like, what do you think happens? Like, what would happen? Tim's dead tomorrow. What do you do? Well, I guess, I'm going to keep do what I can to run the business. And okay, how big of a financial contributor is Tim to the business? Oh, he's pretty big. So could you hire somebody to do his job? And I could probably do some of his job, but yeah, we'd have to hire some employees. Okay. And then, and so we'll talk about that, because wouldn't it be nice if on either way, and Tim, how about you with Jeff? You got to make him wear both hats, right? Was Jeff pretty contributor? What happens if Jeff's not here tomorrow to just from a strictly work aspect to your partnership? Yeah, I'd probably have to hire somebody. So why don't we put some, like, would it be helpful if you had $1 million of liquidity to go be able to pay someone to operate at a high level? You get somebody really good in here to be an employee of the company, an executive. Yeah, that'd be helpful. And do you want to take that from your savings? No, I don't want to do that. Why don't we go get some key man insurance, life insurance on each of you? That way it just helps the business continue to go in the event that you guys are no longer, one of you's not here. And most people are like, yeah, no, that makes perfect sense. I'm like, okay, now second, what happens when, I always do it this way. I'd say, I'll use you and Bill here. Let's say you're Justin and Bill are the owners. I say, Justin, so Bill, let's say Bill passes away. What happens to his 50% ownership of the company?
Nope.
And you're going to say, I guess he probably leaves it to his wife, right? Because most of them don't have a mandatory buy-sell agreement in there.
Yep.
Okay, and does she work in the business at all? Bill's wife? No, she doesn't. Okay, but listen, you guys have gotten along great. The families get along super well. Bill's got a lot of money. Bill has socked away money over the years, so she'd be fine. Eventually, if we make distributions out of the company, she'd get her portion of it. And I said, yeah, I said that can happen. What I have seen, we were brought in after the fact on this one to try and cure it, and I'd much rather prevent it. But we had two brothers, and they were both married, and one of them died, and they had no mandatory buy-sell agreement, so the spouse inherited that business interest, and for a while they were getting dividends, and then what happened is they wanted to begin to expand, right? Because they said, hey, we're going to start growing, we're going to buy this other location, and we're going to do this, and so by the way, Bill's wife, I need you to co-sign on this personal guarantee for this $8 million loan we're going to get to open up a new facility. And she's like, no, I don't think I want to do that. Or worse, and this has happened too. And Bill, this is not your wife. I'm just saying this is somebody else's. So you just got to take it in that. And she gets remarried. And the new husband's going, how come we only get distributions? They're in this growth mode. So they're saying there's very little profit, but they're distributing profit. It's enough to pay the tax liability that the thing is creating every year. How come we don't get more money from this? Well, let's go talk to Justin about it. And we go talk to Justin, and Justin says, well, Guys, we're in growth mode. I mean, I'm not taking any. I'm taking the same distributions you are to cover the tax of the profit of the company, but all the extra money's going back into growth. They're going, yeah, but you get a salary. You're going, yeah, but well, that's because I work here. I do that. And the new husband says, I can work here. In fact, I've always been interested in this work. Let me. And all of a sudden, all these unintended consequences can potentially have this thing really off the rails. So let me give you some examples of ways people typically look to make this not a problem. Because you know what Bill's wife would really want, or Justin, Bill, if Justin dies, what his wife would really want, she didn't want this operating company, and she didn't want to be a part of it. What she wants is money. And so instead, what you can have is a mandatory buy-sell agreement that takes this as not a negotiation. It's off the table. That let's for Justin, you die. There is the company will be valued based on an already determined valuation formula, and Bill will get to buy it from your spouse for that, but based on that valuation. And now, Bill, you got the key man insurance, so at least you don't have to worry about like the profit going down from I can get a good person in here to help me with this stuff. But we also probably want enough to be able to pay all, or at least a lot of, what you would agree to buy the business for. Some more insurance that in the event one of you dies while you're still owning this together, that it will buy out that partner's interest, or at least most of it. And then you can pay the rest out in a note, and then you've got 100% of the operating company. Does all that make sense? And so before we move on to the real estate side, Justin, I'll stop there and just get your thoughts.
Yeah, it's exciting. The conversation is different, especially when you ask it as a question. You're not selling something. You're just asking what happens now, and getting to the point of clarity. And then is that what you want to have happen? No. Okay. What would you like to have happen? Great. And then how would you like to fund that? Well, there's limited options here. And you go buy some lotto tickets and hope. You can do some wishful thinking as part of your planning, but that's not great planning. And again, this is changing the dynamic again about, instead of what do you want to have happen when you die, so much as what's the story that you guys are trying to create? What's the evolution? What things that are important to you, the rich life, the unlived life that you have going on right now, that continues on for your spouse, your kids, and to multiple generations.
Hey, thanks for tuning in to From Busy to Rich. If you're listening and something sparks a question, or you just want to explore these ideas further, visit us at wesyounglive.com or email us at info@wesyounglive.com. You'll find free resources, tools, and ways to get in touch. We'd love to hear from you.
Yeah. No, I love it. And so now different assets can work differently. So this company, like in particular, they have a mandatory buy sell on the operating entity. But when we started talking about the property that it's on, it's a shopping center basically that has their operating company on it, but there's also other people on it that pay rent into them on it. And they pay rent from their operating company, and then they take that money out, and then they get rents from other people. So I said, so what do you want to have? What about this? And they're like, well, there's really not a lot involved in operating that. I mean, we have a management company that kind of takes care of all that for us. So it's not, it's just kind of like we get rent and it does distributions. And when we need to, do upgrades, we got a set amount we keep in reserves in the company and pay for it. I said, so what would you want to have happen? Would your family want that in the event? And in this particular case, it's not always the case, but in this particular case, they said, yeah, we'd kind of like that to stay in our family's inheritance. We would like that. And I said, then great. Then what happens is it is an optional buy-sell agreement, which means that at death, let's say that Justin passes and his interest goes to Lacey, and Lacey gets it. And then you tell her, hey, you can either continue to get the distributions from this rental property that we have, or at some point or now you can sell it. Now, if you sell it, I've got the first right of refusal, and here's how we value it, so that it can't be sold to some third party or somebody like that. And vice versa. It works the opposite way too. So these are things most people just don't have, and they're trying to figure it out, and it gets real expensive. But if they do want it to be bought, then it can be bought on reasonable terms. You can also carry more insurance to help with it. So these are common conversations that I see get missed all the time in people that are calling themselves holistic financial advisors. This is a big impact to their family. Now that's the inheritance side of things that makes things a whole lot more pleasant for the surviving business owner and the deceased business owner's family. Like it's all just taken care of. You don't have to it's like having a prearranged, burial plot and casket and all that stuff picked out. Your family, they're going through the worst time in their life, doesn't have to go do that. This is already done.
Yeah.
And then secondarily, now how do we go from this inheritance to heritage with the inheritance? This is one of my favorite things to talk about with business owners. I'll say, because I've usually already gone through with them, like this idea of the family constitution that we talked about last week, where you have all of your values, traditions, knowledge, culture, and principles that you've kind of outlined in this constitution. Here's what we care about. Well, businesses kind of have this too. I think they're not always that good, but you've got your business vision. Where are we going as an organization together? Where are we now? Where are we going as an organization together? What are our values? What are the initiatives that are normal things we're going to keep doing and new things that we're going to add into the normal right now over the next, call it 90 days. But I'll tell you, Justin, this is why I love things like Strategic Coach that you and I go to, where every 90 days, it's an opportunity for us to just get out of the business and actually in a thoughtful way say, okay, where am I now as a business and as a person? You kind of go all the way around it, and where do I want to go? What is the future that I want to create? What unlived life within us from a business standpoint is happening here? And then you can say, now, what are we going to do about it? What normal do I want to nurture, and what new things do I want to make a part of the normal that I feel like over the next 90 days is actually going to help me move the needle? And what's great about that, you kind of outline that and then do a Loom video or a screen recording of some kind of you talking about that vision, talking about what you see is possible, where you are right now, kind of the state. It's almost like a State of the Union address, but more intentional. And so you record yourself, because the biggest thing that we run out of time before we run out of all the ideas and opportunities we could pursue. So if you have this time scheduled to focus your attention again, and then you're going to run, and then you time to focus your attention again. So once a quarter, especially if you're a business owner, like this kind of vision, values, mission, here's where we are, here's where we're going, here's what we're going to do about it. Incredibly impactful to an intentionally growing business. Now, then you can do like the business retreat, which the business retreat is great because it's somewhat of like your family retreat where, hey, let's go enjoy what we're doing together. Let's enjoy the fruits of our wins that we're having. And depending on where stage your business is in, maybe this is on a small scale or it can be on a big scale, but we're just enjoying it. And it gives you opportunities to kind of flesh these things out together and saying, hey, here are my thoughts on where we are and where we can go. Here's the initiatives I'm thinking about including in here. What do you think about that? So that, again, not only, and then if you want to bring family members into the business, like there are rules typically that we can put in place over time to say, yeah, they can work here. And what we believe, and you say while you're alive, what you believe about that is, hey, the way that we believe family members, and this is good for you to talk about while you're alive with your business partner, because if he wants to bring his son or daughter in at some point and you're like, okay, but what if they're not that great, right? What if they're just a drag on the company? So you mutually agree, hey, what are our expectations? We're not just going to pay them a bunch of money. What are the expectations for what they can earn as they're here? And do they eventually earn their way into partnership? So we go through all these kind of conversations because most people don't have them. But here's what's fascinating, Justin, and then I want you to kind of give me your thoughts around all this. Unleashing human potential, when we talk about that, is not just at your death. It is during life. And when you engage in these family retreats, the family constitution, the business vision and values and initiatives, and the business retreats, these things unleash your human capital. They unleash your human potential, and you give a path for people around you to go, what do you need to do to turn it up to the next notch? So thoughts on all that?
Yeah, it just makes me think of a couple of things. One is recent conversation with some clients. And what I see, my experience, the people that tend to get really excited about talking about this topic, especially as minority shareholders, because they find out like, oh, Bill owns 60% and I own 20% and Wes owns 20%. Well, what happens if Bill dies? wait, we only own 20%.
Yeah,
And so Bill's wife gets to make all the decisions. It's not a split decision on like what's happening with the company.
that's a great point.
So it's just an easy way to talk about it. But I think ultimately, regardless of who you're speaking with within the owners and across estate planning as a whole, one of the things that I see, it's a common mistake. If you're creating a heritage and you really want to do that, you have to include the family in these discussions. It can't just be something you're deciding on in some isolated like hole off into a cave where you're storing this, and then it goes into a document that's put in your safe that nobody ever knows about or is aware of until you die.
Right.
Like not just your spouse, your business partners, but all generations of the family, understanding that and the other people involved, to continue to update that and talk through about not just the videos that we talked about last time that you can create, but keeping it live and real with them of this is why, passing on that knowledge and being the storyteller for your family to create that ongoing heritage, again, the legacy that comes with it. And people get excited, in my experience, in talking about a heritage because it's part of purpose and the value of life that you're passing on.
You create a heritage while you're alive. And so it's an active thing. You unleash human potential while you're alive. And as much inheritance as you leave will never amount to the impact that your heritage, if it was a heritage that created the inheritance. And so I love all that. Last wrap-up thing I'd say here, Justin, is large estates, because we get this too, where people that have super large estates, that there's this other additional thing that we navigate and around a very simple conversation. It's a 10-minute conversation that, in addition to all these things we've talked about, because no matter how much the family's worth, we talk about these things and put basic documents and insurance and make sure the heritage versus inheritance discussion. The other element that exists in a larger families is the estate tax system gets involved in their situation. And so oftentimes what ends up happening, again, this is, if you don't flow it, you don't know it. They don't understand that, hey, you died. Did you know that there's going to be a $40 million estate tax in this estate? So you have $20 million of cash and the rest is illiquid assets. Where are we going to come up with that? Because if you do know planning, this is what it is. And then you can kind of, if you show them what it looks like today and they're like, don't like that, then we'll go, okay, let's talk through some options. So we have a great 10-minute narrative conversation that I could do on a napkin. We have a nice output and planning shepherd that does it for us, that we take people through. And again, if you want to get to learn more about that, you want to dig into that, just come to Transform. Go to wesyounglive.com, wesyounglive.com, and you'll have everything you need to join our next Transform session. We cover all this stuff in greater detail and a whole lot more.
Absolutely. And we hope you guys enjoyed today's episode. As Wes mentioned, please check out wesyounglive.com for a ton of additional resources. There's some free ones and some courses that we have coming up as new options for another release. Until next time, thank you for listening.